It was supposed to be a night of elegance and celebration. But what happened that evening would leave everyone at the gala talking for weeks. The room was filled with the usual glitz and glamour you'd expect: fine dresses, polished shoes, and sparkling champagne. Everyone was there to enjoy themselves, to network, to mingle. But in the middle of all the pleasantries, an incident unfolded that no one saw coming. Picture this: the music is soft, the lights are dim, and people are enjoying the flow of conversation. In walks a well-dressed man, confident and quietly making his way through the crowd. He's the type of guy who easily blends in, his suit tailored to perfection, his demeanor polite but reserved. He didn't come to make a scene. He was there, like everyone else, to enjoy the night. But then across the room, a woman glances his way. Her eyes linger just a moment too long, and the look on her face isn't one of recognition or kindness. It's something else: suspicion. She turns to the person beside her, whispers something, and before long, she's making her way toward him. At first, it's subtle. She circles around him, her eyes scanning the room as though she's looking for something. Her body language changes, growing more tense with each step. The man, unaware of her scrutiny, continues his quiet evening, oblivious to the growing tension. He chats with a few acquaintances, nods politely to the servers, and simply enjoys the atmosphere. Then it happens. In a moment that feels almost rehearsed, the woman approaches him directly. Her voice is loud enough to catch the attention of those nearby, but not enough to cause a full-blown scene just yet. "Excuse me," she says with a forced politeness. "I couldn't help but notice. I'm missing something. Have you seen my bracelet?" He looks puzzled, caught off guard by her sudden question. "No, I haven't seen anything," he replies calmly, unsure of where this is going. But she's not convinced. "It was right here," she insists, her voice growing sharper. "I was wearing it earlier, and now it's gone." People nearby start to look over, their conversations pausing as they sense something unfolding. The mood shifts. The once friendly atmosphere starts to feel uneasy. The woman's eyes narrow, and her voice rises just enough to draw more attention. "I'm sorry," she says, but there's no real apology in her tone. "But I saw you near the table where I left my things. Are you sure you haven't seen it?" The man, now feeling the weight of curious eyes on him, stands firm. "I haven't touched anything," he says, his voice calm, but with an edge of frustration beginning to creep in. The woman takes a step back, looking around as if to gather support. "It's just strange," she continues, her voice dripping with accusation. "You were the only one near my things. How could it just disappear?" By now, a small crowd has formed. The whispers start low murmurs of confusion, curiosity, and something else. Something darker. People begin exchanging glances, their faces reflecting the growing tension in the room. Some seem to silently take her side, while others look uncomfortable, unsure of what's happening but not willing to get involved. The man remains composed, but you can see the shift in his expression. What started as a simple misunderstanding is quickly spiraling into something much more serious. He knows what this looks like. He's been here before: accusations based on nothing more than an assumption, a gut feeling that's all too familiar. And now, all eyes are on him. The woman, sensing that she has the crowd's attention, doubles down. "Look," she says, her voice now steady and cold. "I don't want to make a scene, but I think you should check your pockets, just to be sure." At this point, the tension in the room is thick. You can feel it in the air, in the way people are holding their breath, waiting for what will happen next. The man's jaw tightens. His eyes flicker with a mix of frustration and disbelief. He knows he didn't do anything, but how do you prove that when everyone's already made up their mind? Slowly, almost painfully, he reaches into his pockets, turning them inside out one by one. Each movement feels heavy, as if time has slowed down just for this moment. The crowd watches in silence, their judgment hanging in the air like a cloud over his head. Nothing, His pockets are empty, just as he knew they would be. But instead of an apology, instead of backing down, the woman crosses her arms, looking unimpressed. "Well," she says, her voice thick with skepticism, "it still doesn't explain where my bracelet is." The room is now completely silent. Eyes dart from him to her, and back again, unsure of what to believe. The man stands there, his hands still open, his expression hardening. He's been polite, he's been patient, but now you can see the weariness in his eyes. This isn't just about a bracelet anymore. This is about something much bigger, something that's been lurking beneath the surface all along. And just as it seems, the situation can't get any more tense. Someone steps forward. A voice cuts through the heavy silence, a voice that will change everything. A voice breaks through the tension, clear and deliberate. "Wait a minute," someone says from the crowd. Heads turn toward the source. It's an older man, dressed in a sharp suit, his face calm, but with a hint of concern. He's not part of the inner circle, but it's obvious he's been watching the whole thing unfold. "Maybe we should all take a breath here." The crowd shifts slightly, some nodding in quiet agreement, while others remain focused on the man and the woman, waiting for the next move. The man in the suit continues, his voice steady. "I don't think this is the way to handle it. If something is missing, we should be careful not to make accusations too quickly." The woman turns toward him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "I'm not accusing anyone," she says, though her tone says otherwise. "I'm just saying it's suspicious." Suspicion. That word hangs in the air like a heavy fog, thickening the atmosphere even more. The man, standing still at the center of it all, feels the weight of it pressing down on him. He's been through this before. Maybe not here, maybe not at a fancy gala, but this feeling, this moment, where eyes turn cold and doubt seeps in, this isn't new to him. He's learned over time how quickly situations like this can escalate. He keeps his voice calm, but firm. "I've already told you, I haven't seen your bracelet. I don't know what else I can say." The woman's face tightens. She's not backing down, but now there's a slight crack in her confidence, a hesitation. "I'm just trying to find my things," she mutters, glancing around as if looking for backup. That's all. More people are watching now. Some whisper to each other in low tones, while others exchange uncomfortable glances. No one wants to get too involved, but it's clear that this isn't just going to blow over. As the tension builds, the background of this night starts to come into focus. This wasn't just any event. This gala was a high-profile charity function, an annual gathering of some of the wealthiest and most influential people in the city. Everyone had come dressed to impress, hoping to rub shoulders with those who could open doors to new opportunities. But behind all the glitz and glamour, there were always whispers, unspoken rules about who belonged and who didn't. The man knew that. He wasn't naive. He was invited as a guest by a friend who vouched for him and knew he'd fit in. But he also knew not everyone saw it that way. He'd felt the sideways glances as soon as he walked in, the subtle looks exchanged between people when he passed by. He had learned to brush it off, but deep down, he couldn't ignore it. This wasn't the first time he'd been treated like he didn't quite belong. As the crowd began to swell, it became clear that this wasn't going away on its own. More people were drawn to the drama, eager to see how it would unfold. And while the woman wasn't shouting, her words had already set off a chain reaction. The accusation was out there, whether she fully meant it or not. The older man who had spoken earlier tried to defuse the situation again. "Look," he said, stepping forward slightly, "we don't want to ruin the night over a misunderstanding. Maybe we should take this somewhere else, talk it through calmly." But the woman shook her head, her frustration now evident. "I know what I saw. He was standing right there when I left my things. It's too much of a coincidence." The man's patience was wearing thin, but he held it together. "I didn't take anything," he repeated, his voice firmer this time. "And accusing me without proof isn't going to help you find your bracelet." The woman folded her arms across her chest, staring him down. "Then where is it?" she demanded. It didn't just disappear into thin air. More people were inching closer now, forming a loose circle around them. The energy in the room had shifted from a festive, carefree vibe to something far more charged. You could feel it, this sense that something bigger was at play. Suddenly, another voice chimed in from the crowd, this one sharper, cutting through the murmurs. "Maybe we should check the cameras," someone suggested. It was a logical idea, but it only made the moment more intense. Security cameras. The words lingered in the air, carrying a weight of their own. Everyone knew the venue had them, discreetly placed around the room for safety. Checking the footage would either prove the woman right or expose a mistake that she wasn't ready to admit. The man met her gaze directly. "Go ahead," he said, his voice steady, though there was an unmistakable edge of frustration now. "Check the cameras. You'll see I didn't do anything." The suggestion seemed to rattle her, but she quickly masked her discomfort. "Fine," she said, though her tone was far less confident than before. "Let's see what the cameras show." A few people in the crowd nodded in agreement, whispering among themselves. Some looked eager for the truth, while others seemed more interested in the spectacle of it all. Either way, the suggestion had shifted the momentum, and now it was clear that this wasn't just about a missing bracelet. It was about proving who was right and who was wrong. And with so many eyes on them, it had become more than just a simple misunderstanding. It was turning into something far more complicated, something deeper that neither of them fully understood yet. As they waited for someone to notify security, the man stood there, silent, watching the woman as she fidgeted with her purse. There was something strange in the air, a growing sense that this situation wasn't as simple as it seemed. The crowd was caught between curiosity and discomfort, and no one knew what would happen next. The tension continued to build, but the truth was still out of reach. As the crowd continued to murmur among themselves, waiting for security to arrive, a sense of unease settled over the gala. The bright lights seemed too harsh now, illuminating the faces that watched with mixed emotions, some sympathetic, others judgmental. The man could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, like an invisible hand gripping his shoulders, threatening to crush him under the strain of suspicion and doubt. Then, just as the atmosphere reached a boiling point, a familiar figure emerged from the crowd. It was a woman in her early 30s, elegant and poised, wearing a stunning red dress that clung to her figure perfectly. She exuded confidence, and her presence immediately shifted the mood. The crowd parted slightly as she walked forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice clear and authoritative. She looked around, taking in the tension in the air. Her eyes settled on the man, and he felt a flicker of recognition. It was someone he had met at previous events, a fellow guest with connections in the city. The woman with the accusation seemed taken aback, her expression faltering for a moment. "I was just accusing him of taking something that isn't his," the confident woman finished, her tone sharp. "I don't know the details, but I've been watching from the sidelines, and I can assure you that jumping to conclusions is rarely the best approach." The crowd turned slightly, some nodding in agreement, while others still looked uncertain. The confident woman stepped closer to the man, her expression softening. "I remember you," she said, her voice lowering slightly. "You're not the kind of person to do something like this." "I know that." "Thank you," he replied, grateful for her support, but still shaken. The sudden attention felt overwhelming. "But it's not just about me. There's something more going on here." The woman in red turned back to the crowd. "Let's not forget that we're all here for a cause tonight. We're here to raise money, to support one another. This isn't how we should be treating each other." With that, she addressed the gala attendees more directly. "I suggest we call security and check the footage, but let's do so with respect. This isn't just a game of blame, it's a serious matter, and we shouldn't treat one another like suspects in a crime." Some people murmured their agreement, and the tension eased slightly, but not completely. The woman who had made the accusation remained defensive, arms crossed tightly across her chest. She opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted as a security guard arrived, a tall man with a no-nonsense demeanor. "What's going on here?" he asked, surveying the scene. The confident woman quickly filled him in on the situation, highlighting the accusations without bias. The guard nodded, his expression serious. "Let's review the footage then. If something was taken, we'll find out who's telling the truth." As they moved toward the back of the venue, where the security cameras had recorded the evening's events, the man felt a knot in his stomach. Would the footage exonerate him, or would it expose something he didn't even know was happening? His heart raced, not just from the uncertainty of the moment, but from the realization that the stakes had just been raised. This was no longer just about a missing bracelet. It was about his reputation, his integrity. The small crowd followed closely, creating an anxious buzz that seemed to build with each step. Once they reached the security room, the atmosphere shifted again. The guard pressed a few buttons on the monitor, and the screen lit up, showing the various angles from the gala. There it was, a live feed, replaying the night's events. The crowd gathered around the screen, curiosity tinged with tension. The woman's accusations echoed in the air, now coupled with the anticipation of what the footage might reveal. The guard fast-forwarded through the clips, showing guests mingling, laughing, and enjoying themselves. Then he slowed it down, rewinding to a few moments before the incident. The man felt his breath catch as he saw himself on screen, just as he remembered walking through the crowd, mingling, his demeanor calm and friendly. But just as he was about to allow himself a moment of relief, something caught his eye in the footage. The woman who had accused him suddenly appeared, clearly agitated, as she searched her purse and glanced around nervously. The camera zoomed in on her face, capturing a moment of anxiety that was all too real. She reached into her purse, pulling out a shiny object, a bracelet. It glimmered under the lights, identical to the one she claimed was missing. The crowd gasped collectively, the realization sinking in. The woman had the bracelet all along. But the moment of relief was short-lived. As the camera continued to roll, the focus shifted again. A few moments later, the woman was seen slipping something into her purse with a quick, furtive motion. It was almost imperceptible, but enough for the observant eye to catch it. A shadow flitted across her face. Was it guilt or something more sinister? The crowd erupted in whispers, confusion spreading like wildfire. The man felt a mix of disbelief and vindication wash over him. Was she setting him up? What had she put in her purse? Before he could digest the implications of this new information, the confident woman stepped forward again, her expression grave. "We need to know what she just did. This isn't just about a bracelet anymore." The guard nodded, rewinding the footage to capture the moment again. As they replayed the scene, the whispers grew louder, the crowd shifting uneasily. It was clear that everyone was grappling with the sudden twist, the stakes now raised dramatically. Then, just as the footage reached the crucial moment, the power flickered. The screen went dark, and a hush fell over the room. The lights buzzed momentarily before stabilizing, but the monitors remained unresponsive. "What just happened?" someone in the crowd asked, frustration creeping into their voice. The guard banged his fist lightly against the console, but it was clear that the technical failure had thrown a wrench into their investigation. "Just give me a minute," he said, but the tension in the room was palpable. The woman who had made the accusation stood frozen, a flicker of panic crossing her face. She glanced at the man, eyes darting between him and the dark screen, her expression shifting as if she were weighing her options. "You're going to regret this," she warned him, her voice low, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. "You think you're so innocent, but you have no idea what's really happening." The crowd murmured again, uncertainty swirling in the air. The sudden twist had injected fresh adrenaline into the room, and everyone was left with more questions than answers. The man couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper at play, a connection he couldn't quite grasp. The woman's threat hung in the air like a storm cloud, casting a shadow over everything. Before he could respond, the confident woman stepped in again, this time with a firm tone. "We need to get to the bottom of this. Let's see if there are any other cameras in the vicinity that might have captured what happened." The crowd began to move, drawn by her leadership and clarity. But as they made their way out of the security room, the man felt a chill run down his spine. The woman's threat lingered in his mind, intertwining with the mysterious twist of events. Who was she really? What was her endgame? And why had she tried to frame him in the first place? As they exited, the gala atmosphere felt changed, like the world outside was cloaked in uncertainty. The man glanced around at the guests, their expressions a mixture of intrigue and wariness. It was clear that something larger was unfolding. The stakes were no longer just personal, they had grown to encompass the entire event, a shadow of suspicion hovering over everyone. The search for additional footage continued, but as they moved deeper into the venue, it became evident that tensions were escalating. Whispers followed them, and the once jubilant mood had shifted to a more serious tone. This wasn't just about a missing bracelet, it was about integrity, about trust, about the darker undercurrents that sometimes lurked beneath the surface of even the most glamorous events. Finally, they reached a secondary security room, and the guard began to sort through another set of monitors. But before they could settle in, a voice called out from the other side of the room, "You need to see this." A few people turned, the atmosphere electric with anticipation. The guard rushed over, looking worried. The crowd followed, all eyes trained on the monitor, as the feed flickered to life. What appeared on the screen left everyone breathless. A clear shot from outside the venue showed the woman from earlier, the one who had accused him, standing with a group of men, her body language animated. They were talking, but the audio was muffled. As the guard increased the volume, a few words began to break through. "You don't understand. If he gets blamed, we can." The voice trailed off, but the implication was clear. Something much larger was at stake. The man felt his heart race as he listened, trying to piece together the fragmented conversation. It felt as though the puzzle was coming together, yet the more he learned, the less he understood. "We can't let him find out," the woman warned, her tone urgent. "You don't know what he's capable of." With each word, the atmosphere thickened with tension, the crowd transfixed. The conversation between her and the men hinted at a web of deception that ran far deeper than he could have imagined. Who were they? What was their connection? Just as the guard attempted to adjust the settings for better clarity, the screen flickered and went black again. The power surged once more, and the room was enveloped in an eerie silence. "What is happening?" Someone shouted, frustration bubbling over. "Stay calm," the guard instructed, but his own composure seemed to be slipping. As they tried to regain control of the situation, the confident woman from before turned to the man, her expression serious. "This isn't just about you anymore. There are forces at play here that we don't fully understand. We need to be careful." The crowd's anxiety grew palpable, the stakes escalating. He felt a sudden sense of urgency, a need to uncover the truth before it spiraled completely out of control. What was he missing? What hidden connections lay beneath the surface? As they resumed their search for answers, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real conflict was only just beginning. The crowd was now more than just guests at a gala. They were unwitting players in a game that threatened to engulf them all. With the tension rising, the man knew he had to act fast. He had to confront the woman who had accused him, not just to clear his name, but to discover what she truly knew and what her intentions were. The night was far from over, and he had a sinking feeling that the twists and turns were only just starting to unfold. As he steeled himself for what lay ahead, he couldn't help but glance at the crowd around him. Each face held secrets, and with each passing moment, he felt the weight of those secrets pressing down on him, compelling him to seek out the truth before it consumed him entirely. The night was turning into a labyrinth of intrigue and deception, and he was determined to find his way through, no matter the cost. The tension in the air was palpable as the man gathered his thoughts, his heart racing in his chest. He had to confront the woman who had accused him, but now it felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into the unknown. Each breath seemed to weigh heavy with anticipation as he pushed his way through the crowd, his determination unwavering despite the gnawing anxiety that clung to him. The gala had turned from a celebration to a battleground of mistrust, and the stakes were higher than he had ever imagined. As he made his way back to the main hall, where guests were still whispering among themselves, the man's mind raced with possibilities. What would he say? How could he get to the truth before it was too late? He spotted her across the room, the woman in red, still holding court with a small group of onlookers. She appeared poised, but he could see the flicker of worry in her eyes as she caught sight of him approaching. The crowd parted slightly, a collective tension hanging in the air, as if everyone sensed the confrontation was imminent. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice firm but low, desperate to cut through the murmurings that surrounded them. She hesitated, glancing around as if weighing her options before nodding slightly, leading him to a quieter corner near the grand staircase. "What do you want?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. Her posture was a stark contrast to her earlier confidence, and he could see cracks forming in her facade. "I want the truth," he replied, meeting her gaze directly. "Why did you accuse me? What were you hoping to gain?" She scoffed, but he could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. "You don't understand," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "It's not just about you. There are things happening that are much bigger than either of us. I was trying to protect myself." "Protect yourself from what?" he pressed, sensing that he was close to breaking through her defenses. "What are you involved in?" She glanced around again, as if checking for eavesdroppers, before leaning in closer. "You're in over your head. This isn't just about a missing bracelet or a silly gala. It's about something much darker, and I couldn't let you get too close." "Darker?" he repeated, feeling a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean? Who are those men you were speaking with earlier?" She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the guard from before appeared behind them, his expression serious. "We've got a problem," he said, his voice urgent. "We need to move now." "What's happening?" the man asked, glancing between the guard and the woman, who looked increasingly panicked. "The security footage has gone missing. Someone has tampered with it," the guard said, glancing back towards the monitors. "And we suspect that the woman who made the initial accusation might be involved." The woman's eyes widened, and she opened her mouth to protest, but the guard cut her off. "We don't have time for explanations. We need to get you both to safety until we can figure this out." Before he could respond, a loud crash echoed from the main hall, and the crowd erupted into chaos. People screamed and rushed for the exits, panic spreading like wildfire. The man's heart raced as he instinctively reached for the woman's hand. "We have to go," he shouted, pulling her along as they navigated through the throng of guests. As they ran toward a side exit, the sound of raised voices and shouts grew louder behind them. The guard led the way, pushing through the crowd, urgency propelling them forward. The man felt a mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through his veins. This was no longer just a gala, it was a desperate race for survival. They burst through a door into a dimly lit hallway, the noise from the main event muffled behind them. The guard paused, catching his breath. "We need to find a secure place to regroup and figure out what's going on," he said, glancing back toward the chaos. "Follow me." The man glanced at the woman beside him, whose expression had shifted from defiance to fear. "You need to tell me everything," he insisted, the urgency in his voice undeniable. "What's happening?" As they navigated the maze of hallways, the woman hesitated. "I don't know all the details," she admitted, her voice trembling. "But I got caught up in something I didn't fully understand. There's a group, powerful people, who use events like this to manipulate and control." "Control what?" He pressed, desperate for clarity. "Money. Influence. Information," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I got too close. I thought if I framed you, it would divert attention away from me. I didn't expect it to spiral like this." Suddenly, the guard halted, raising a hand to signal for silence. "We need to be quiet. I think I heard something." They all fell silent, listening intently. The low murmur of voices filtered down the hallway, and the man felt his heart pound in his chest. "Do you think it's them?" the woman asked, fear etched across her face. "Who?" the man asked, glancing between them. "The men I was talking to. They're not just any guests," she said. "They're connected to some dangerous people. If they find us, we could be in serious trouble." Before he could respond, footsteps echoed closer, and the guard motioned for them to press against the wall. The man's heart raced as he listened, straining to make out the words being spoken. "Did you get rid of the footage?" a deep voice demanded. "Yes, it's taken care of. No one will find out what she's really up to," a second voice replied. "But we need to move fast. The longer we stay, the more likely it is we'll be discovered." The man felt the weight of realization settle over him. The woman had put herself in danger by getting involved with these people, and now they were here, searching for her. They were part of something much larger, a web of deceit that threatened to entangle them all. He glanced at the guard, who nodded slightly, indicating that they needed to move. "This way," he whispered, leading them down another corridor. The man took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing thoughts. As they rounded a corner, they came upon a set of stairs leading down. "We'll head to the basement," the guard suggested. "There's a safe room down there where we can regroup and figure out our next steps." They descended the stairs quickly, the sound of their footsteps muffled against the carpeted steps. The air grew cooler as they reached the basement level, and the man felt a renewed sense of urgency. "Do you think we'll be safe here?" the woman asked, her voice tinged with anxiety. "For now," the guard replied. "But we need to hurry. We don't have much time." They reached the door to the safe room, and the guard fished out a set of keys from his pocket. "Stay close," he instructed, unlocking the door and ushering them inside. The man and the woman stepped into the small room, which was dimly lit and sparsely furnished. Once the door was closed behind them, the guard turned to them. "We need to figure out what we're dealing with. The footage is gone, and whoever tampered with it is going to come looking for you," he said, focusing his gaze on the woman. "You need to tell us everything you know about those men and what they want." The woman hesitated, the weight of her choices bearing down on her. "They're part of a network," she finally admitted, her voice trembling. "They use these events to find targets people they can manipulate for their gain. I thought I could play along, but now I see how dangerous it really is." "Targets?" the man repeated, confusion flickering in his mind. "What do you mean?" "They're looking for people with influence, wealth, or information," she explained. "And when I realized they had their sights set on you, I panicked. I thought I could divert their attention. I didn't know it would lead to all of this." Before they could process her words, a loud banging echoed from the door, followed by a voice that sent a chill down the man's spine. "We know you're in there. Open up." The guard's expression hardened, and he quickly moved to the door, looking through the small window. "It's them," he whispered, panic rising in his voice. "We need to find a way out." The woman's face paled, and the man could see her grappling with the gravity of their situation. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Follow me," the guard said, moving toward a small panel hidden behind a bookshelf. He pressed a button, and a hidden door swung open, revealing a narrow passageway. They squeezed through, the passage dim and claustrophobic. The man felt the weight of the woman's hand gripping his tightly, her fear radiating through him. They moved swiftly, the pounding on the door growing louder behind them. "This leads to the back of the venue," the guard explained, urgency evident in his tone. "We can find a way to escape before they get in." As they navigated the narrow corridor, the man's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. The confrontation with the men was inevitable, but he felt a sense of resolve building within him. He couldn't let fear dictate their fate. Finally, they reached another door that led outside. The guard pushed it open, and they stepped into the cool night air. A sense of relief washed over the man, but it was short-lived. They were still in danger, and the night was far from over. "Where do we go now?" the woman asked, looking around anxiously. "There's a car parked a few blocks away," the guard replied, scanning the area. "We need to move quickly." They hurried through the shadows, the man's heart pounding with adrenaline as he glanced over his shoulder, expecting to see the men chasing after them. But the night remained eerily quiet, the tension hanging thick in the air. As they approached the car, the guard fumbled for his keys, his hands shaking slightly. "Get in," he instructed, urgency lacing his voice. They climbed into the back seat, the man's mind racing as he tried to formulate a plan. Once the guard was in the driver's seat, he quickly started the car, the engine roaring to life. "Hold on," he said, backing out of the alleyway. They sped away from the venue, the city lights blurring past them. The man turned to the woman, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. "What's next?" he asked, his voice steady. "We need to find a safe place to regroup," the woman said, her eyes flickering with resolve. "I have a contact who might be able to help us. But we have to be careful. They'll be looking for us." As they drove through the winding streets, the man felt a surge of hope mixed with uncertainty. They had escaped for now, but the danger was far from over. He could feel the weight of the secrets pressing down on them, threatening to unravel everything they had fought for. "Tell me about this contact," he urged, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "She's a journalist," the woman replied, her voice steadying as she spoke. "She's been investigating this network for a while now. If anyone knows how to handle this situation, it's her." The guard nodded, his focus unwavering. "Let's get there quickly then. We don't have time to waste." As they continued their drive, the man couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. Every glance in the rearview mirror sent shivers down his spine, the shadows of the night threatening to close in on them. Finally, they arrived at a small apartment building on the outskirts of the city. The guard parked the car, and they climbed out, scanning the area for any signs of danger. "Stay close," he instructed, leading the way toward the entrance. They climbed the stairs to the second floor, the tension mounting with every step. The man felt a mix of anticipation and dread as they approached the door to the journalist's apartment. The guard knocked sharply, his gaze flickering to the side as if expecting trouble.